You're listening to the Secure Dad Podcast. Discover ways to secure your home, protect your family, and enjoy fatherhood. Now, here's your host, Andy Murphy.
Welcome to the Secure Dad Podcast. I'm Andy Murphy, the creator of The Secure Dad. I established this podcast, my website, and my book to help families live safer, happier lives. On the show today, we're talking about fear. More importantly, we're talking about knowing fear and how to manage it with my guest today, Coach Tony Blauer. I'm very excited for this show as we're going to be talking about a subject that has helped me personally. All of that ahead on this edition of the Secure Dad Podcast. So my book is once again a #1 bestseller thanks to my new readers. I appreciate your support, and I hope you take the time and implement the layered home defense strategy in your house. Also, a few months back, the book eclipsed the 2,000 copies sold mark, and I've been very proud of that. If you're new to my show, my book, Home Security, The Secure Dad's Guide, is available exclusively at Amazon. You can find it in paperback and Kindle formats. Go to Amazon.com and simply search The Secure Dad. My guest on the show today is Coach Tony Blauer. For more than 4 decades, Tony has been instructing everyday people how to defend themselves physically and protect themselves mentally. He's the inventor of the Spear System, the high guard training suit that you see everywhere, and he's the author of the No Fear Seminar. Tony has helped thousands of people build the confidence and skills that they need to protect themselves. And if that weren't enough, he's also a dog person. I wanted to have Tony on the show because I like the way he teaches mindset and self-defense. I learned no fear from him online, and it was awesome. You'll later hear what I learned. And I wanted to share this with you because it meant a lot to me, and I wanted you to have the same opportunity that I had. So here's my conversation with Coach Tony Blauer. Tony, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. You are leading an eventful life. Give us a quick rundown of your martial arts and your teaching experience.
Wow. Trying to keep that an abridged Reader's Digest version because I have been teaching now 43 years. I've been doing stuff since I'm 7. So that's 52 years that I've been involved in some sort of martial arts self-defense practice. When I was 12, I got attacked by 2 guys. I wasn't really hurt. I was more scared. And, but I went home to my dad and I said, hey, I just got jumped, like leaving a baseball game. And he said, well, you need to learn martial arts, you know? And I was like, okay. And it was right around when Bruce Lee had passed away and the martial art craze was coming on, like, 1973. And I started Taekwondo back then. I had wrestled for years before that, but, until the UFC hit in 1993, nobody thought of wrestling as a great foundation for combat sports. So I had that going, then I boxed but when I was 15, my mom asked me, hey, what are you going to do? You're going to go into the family business. You're going to be a lawyer. You're going to be a doctor. Those are the 3 choices you had in the 70s.
Yeah. I
looked at her without hesitation. And I said, Mom, I'm not going to really go to school. I'm going to be a famous martial artist like Bruce Lee. And she pat me on the head. Literally, I was sitting on the floor stretching, looking at Bruce Lee magazines. She pat me on the head and said, okay, dear, we'll talk about this when you're a little older. But I knew in my teens, there was something in martial arts, in training that I loved. I was always into coaching and teaching. Mm-hmm. I taught skiing, I taught tennis. I loved helping people. It was something that I don't want to say it came naturally to me, but I want to explain this for your listeners that when you really, really love something, you're a natural coach to it. There's a way that I could, you look at someone who, let's say, loves trees. You're walking down the street and someone goes, you see that tree? Like that tree is but they love it so much that they're explaining it from a substance level. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what coaching is.
So today we're going to talk about fear, and we're going to talk about no fear. And honestly, until I did the No Fear Seminar, the most prolific thing I understood about fear came from a buddy of mine in high school. He had gone through Army basic training, and we were eating lunch, and somebody asked him, why do the drill sergeants yell at you? And he said, take a look at everybody in this room. what is the one thing that is going to keep them on the line? And that is fear. Why is fear so important to us as humans?
I think when you think about our evolution at a DNA level, you know, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, the bottom tier is physiology. The second one is safety. The next one up is safety in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For us to evolve as a species, we had to make sure that, you know, we weren't eaten by giant animals, that we didn't die in floods and avalanches, volcanoes. Part of our evolution is understanding how to mitigate and manage a fear a spike and what to do with it. There's a lot of talks out there, and I'm really they don't resonate with me at the way I teach fear. But a lot of people talking about, well, you know, DNA, your sympathetic nervous system, your parasympathetic, that's all real stuff. But there's a lot of like this almost pedantic talk about the physiological sciences behind it. And while I get into that, I pivot as quickly as I can to explain all that matters is your psychological understanding of fear. Because at the end of the day, you're the coach. So when your buddy answered about the drill sergeants, like if we were on stage debating this, I would go, that works in that environment because everyone wants to pass. Nobody wants to wash out.
Sure.
Somebody smarter than the drill sergeant and the student or the cadet in line or the recruit or whatever figured out that if I'm going to tell somebody to run towards gunfire, they need to emphatically trust this order.
Right.
And how do we condition people? And so it's Pavlovian conditioning. I ring a bell, we salivate. You know, I yell no, I yell go, I yell stop, I yell drop. It's one way to teach, and it's effective. What I did is in the late 80s, stumbled across, like an archaeologist, some drills where fear hijacked our complex motor skills. Where in the context of a drill where I thought I was going to respond a certain way, I created a drill, we called it the sucker punch drill, where we were working too close in a very, very unique structured drill so that it was risky and dangerous, but at the same time, it was fun and safe. But there were consequences if you didn't move, like bloody nose, you know,
Right.
black eye, you know, headaches. So it wasn't like we were playing patty cake. We were hitting each other, but it was a controlled isolation drill, what I call an isolation drill. But I did this for about an hour, and I got hit so many times, more than I'd ever been hit. And it was back in the 80s when we had VHS. Like most of your listeners are Googling, what's VHS?
What's VHS? Yeah.
What's VHS, right? And so, you know, no digital, no hard drive, no smartphones, the 80s, RCA, VHS, big cameras. And I'm looking back at these videos of this drill, and I'm noticing that whenever I startle flinched and my hands came up to protect my face, or my hands came up to push away danger, I never got hit clean. But when I tried to do a block, a slip, a parry, what I'll lovingly refer to as wax on, wax off, you know, whatever complex motor skill, sometimes that worked, but very often it didn't. And at first I thought it was like a physical glitch in the matrix, if you will, like something wasn't connecting. But upon some deep introspection, I realized that it was the fear spike of getting hit that hijacked my executive function. So the way the brain works in layperson's terms is you got your amygdala, your reptilian brain, the limbic system. These are all functions. Like your amygdala is a threat detection area. Your reptilian brain is your survival self, right? Fight or flight, you know that. Oh, yeah. And so when that was being attacked because of the uncertainty of the drill, that part of my brain hijacked my if then go to the smart part of my brain, like where we had our cognitive brain, our executive function. If I said to you, you know, you're at the playground and someone walks up and grabs your kid, right? You're the secure dad. What are you going to do? Well, out of context, we say, well, I wouldn't let anyone do that. I would immediately step in between. I would, do. But imagine for a moment, like paying for some ice cream at a playground, and you turn around and your kid's not there. And this has happened to me as a father of three. I've been at Disneyland where for a moment I go, back in the day when it was like 35 millimeter in film, I remember this, where I took a picture, snap, the film starts to go. I look down, I pull my film out, I rotate, I want to miss a picture. I look up, my kid's gone. And even though I know they're not kidnapped, it's like someone stuck a vacuum in my butt and started like sucking out the inside. Like I'm like that adrenaline dump, like holy, wow. And I'm looking around, I'm, Nick, I'm like, calling, and, the panic is starting. But it wasn't like, if you had asked me that the day before, what would you do if your kid will? Well, I would never take my eyes off him. I would do, like, we have an idea of how we perform. And then when it happens, your emotional system hijacks you. And so this became, if I can now backtrack to the 80s, where when I was doing the drill, there was part of my ego that said, okay, I'm going to do this drill. I'm going to record it. I'm going to do really well because I'm the instructor. And next thing I know, I'm getting nailed in the face. I mean, when I finished the exercise, I had a mouse under both eyes, the beginning of black eye, headache, bleeding from my mouth. I had a mouth guard on. My face was swollen. My lip was swollen. The risk of in that moment really put me in a, even though it was a synthetic exercise, meaning I wasn't really in danger, I could have stopped any time. It was synthetic enough that it was real enough that my nervous system responded as if it was real. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. So that was like the ignition moment. You're going to talk about in Talent Code or in some of the books where like, what was the moment that a big bang moment happened where you realized, and I had no idea where it was going to take me, but I knew I was onto something big because I was a good athlete and I was a good boxer. And I'd already been like teaching for, at the time it was like 1987. So I'd been teaching almost 10 years. I knew something was about to happen. So all of that was, within a couple of years, I created my cerebral self-defense, the mental edge program, where I would say to people, like, regardless of what your physical training is, if a stimulus gets introduced too quickly, that was like the definition for, our SPEAR system. SPEAR is an acronym for spontaneous protection enabling accelerated response. And it's the study of the beyond the neuroscience and the stimuli that activate the startle flinch, and then how to weaponize it so that we can protect ourselves or our family. But part of that, like, nothing works in a silo. It's not like this independent thing, which is why we say, like, our system is really, it's the combination of physiology, physics, and psychology. The world's only behaviorally based or scientifically, assembled self-defense protocol. Because I'm not looking at whether you're male or female. I'm not looking about whether you're, an MMA fighter or a soccer mom. It doesn't matter. I'm looking at you. Do you have physiology? Yeah. Right. Do you have fear? Can I trigger a flinch? Can you get scared? Yeah. Do you understand the positions that you can move your body in that will be the strongest for you pound for pound, regardless of your training? Okay, good. Do you understand the psychology of fear? And do you know how to make decisions to enhance your safety or your family's safety? So all of these are like become universal truths, so someone can go through the course. And that was really, that's what spawned out of it. And I didn't know it back then. Like I didn't go, oh wow, here's a new drill, here's a new acronym. Like the acronym, I only came up with the acronym 5 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. So people don't realize, like, a lot of people look at stuff and they go, oh, this is good marketing. Well, this is truly an organic evolution.
Right. This is
decades of research.
Yeah. I was really intrigued by the No Fear seminar. And for those of you who are just listening, you don't quite understand the difference here. And Tony talks about this in the seminar. Back in the 90s, there were all these great shirts. And he makes mention of it. And I had a few too. It was No Fear, N-O, fear. Well, Tony has come up with No Fear as in K-N-O-W, fear. What is the difference from the shirts that we had in the 90s to No Fear that you're talking about now?
Well, it's cool that you had the shirts too. So,
Oh yeah.
Being and everyone did, they did really well. And they're still around. They were, to be doing that stuff, you had to be an adrenaline junkie and a little bit nuts, right? So it was, it was like, no fear, baby. Woohoo,
Right.
But that's all semantics. I mean, I've researched fear and I've researched it by working with, my main business is training military and law enforcement. And so nobody understands fear like those men and women, right? They're moving towards gunfire.
Absolutely.
They're moving towards violent predators. And to protect ourselves, we use different language to cover it up. We're like, no, man, I'm not afraid. I'm like ready to go. I go, well, why is your leg pounding there? Why do you have a pre-jump ritual? Why do you, why are you, crossing your chest? Why are you, like, what's that lucky rabbit foot that you have in your pocket? So all of us, especially athletes, have these little rituals because our type A personalities don't want us to say kind of afraid right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We don't want to do that. I realized that I had all the shirts, and I would make a joke. I'd get up on stage and I go, hey, like, who wants to have no fear? And be like, the shirts on. I go like, this shirt must be defective because I'm still scared. Number one fear is public speaking, and I'm scared up here, but I'm wearing a no fear shirt. How's that possible? So everyone's giggling and laughing. But what I realized is this, that if I sold you a bill of goods saying, man, you do this course and you'll have no fear, and you buy that, and then I go deliver this content, go make this speech, or go, ask this person to marry you, or go tell this person you want a divorce, or go tell your boss you need a raise or you're leaving. All the things like these crucibles in life where we get a fear spike, or we get butterflies in our stomach, our palm is sweating, we're vertically breathing. We're like, oh my God, I'm so nervous right now, right? And then we get nervous about being nervous. That's the crazy thing. It's like, wow, why am I so nervous? Oh my God. And so, in our course, and you remember this, that doubt creates hesitation. Doubt and hesitation unchecked becomes this fixation that can turn into an anxiety. When you see it laid out in a map, and I'm kind of not answering your question, but coming back to it, but I studied it so much and I studied it from the perspective of personal safety. Because I say this to you in particular, I mean, I love what you're doing. I love the name of your company. As a dad, I was a single dad. A lot of people don't know that about me. I've got 3 kids. I'm married right now. We've got 2 girls with my wife, Jessie. But I got custody of my son, which is almost unheard of. I grew up in Canada. I'm an American citizen now. But back in Canada, in Quebec, the mom had to be like a drug addict, prostitute, something like horrible.
Sure.
And that wasn't the case with his mom, but I fought for custody of him and got custody and raised him. So this whole secure dad thing, I mean, like, that means more to me than you know. This idea is like I always tell people this, is that the ability to protect ourselves or a loved one is inarguably the most important skill we could possess.
Agreed.
That you would, and it's crazy because when I say, so show up for the seminar, right? Do the online course. Oh, no, that's too expensive. Like, okay, you just told me that $300 isn't worth your personal safety. And I had a mom, this is a funny story. I had a mom hear me on a radio talk show. She calls me up after and she says, wow, I was about to sign my kids up at this other course. And then I, by fluke, heard yours. And what you were saying is radically different than what this other person said. Your approach is very different. How do I decide? And I said, well, I think with all due respect, you have decided by calling me. Like if you thought my stuff was bogus, you'd go, well, that's garbage. I just heard this and I believe that, because that's what it is. Our beliefs influence our next choices. If I tell people, like when we created our Be Your Own Bodyguard seminar, it's a 1-day course. If you believe that it takes like 5 years to get a black belt and you need a black belt to defend yourself, you will think that this 1-day course is a scam. Mm-hmm. But I've been teaching it since like 2002. I was doing stuff and I've been doing weekend seminars forever. If you ask a doctor, can I get a doctor, an MD license like in a day? He'll go, no, I had to go to school for 7 years, 8 years, work 2 jobs, work my butt off. But if you ask a doctor, can I learn a stop the bleed, tactical first aid, CPR in 7 years? He'll go, yeah, but you can do a 4-hour class or a 6-hour class and you'll have what you need. Right. Mm-hmm. So you can learn life-saving skills in half a day through firemen, EMS, someone can teach you who's qualified. Why can't you learn self-defense in a day? Yeah. People confuse learning a martial art with self-defense. So
true. Very true.
So that's what I've done is I've taken like 30 years of research cumulatively and continue to refine this course so that we're teaching people the essentials: detect, diffuse, defend. And I went off on a little tangent there because I brought up the ability to protect yourself or a loved one is arguably the single most important skill you can possess. But here I am back in the 80s on this radio show, and you see I tied all three stories together.
Yeah.
This mom says, I'm confused now. Can you tell me, like she was asking me to say which course was better. And I said to her, listen,
sure.
And this is an answer I always tell people. They go, what do you think of so-and-so? What do you think about this system? I go, honestly, you don't know me, but my integrity is not for sale. If I thought theirs would better, if I thought their program was better, I would go work for them and teach their course. And of course, that's what anybody said. If I said to you, like, who's got a better podcast about, family safety than you? You go, well, these 10 people are way better than me, but I'm just still peddling my stuff. Like, of course you believe in your stuff.
Right.
Right. And that's the way it should be. But having said that, she tried to like extract something. I said, listen, I can't tell you, what's better. Something in what I said created doubt and hesitation and fear, even though it wasn't like paralyzing fear. It was fear of making the wrong choice in the interest of the safety of your kids. You tracking that?
Oh yeah.
And most people don't have the self-awareness to understand that. That's what's magical about our psychobehavior, that neural circuitry of fear graphic that you saw in your program. You go, wow, I'm in the fear loop here. What does this mean? Well, my beliefs are being challenged. I'm now visualizing something negative in my mind, right? But when you change your relationship with fear, you change your life.
Yeah.
Because fear is unavoidable. It's going to happen somewhere. And so I said to her, and I got to share this, and hopefully people get a smile from this. She hung up on me, by the way, as soon as I said this. So she did not smile. But she said, well, I guess you're right. How much is your course? And back then it was $199 a person for this 2-day seminar. She goes, $199 a person? She goes, wow, this other course is like $50 per person. She said, wow, that's a big difference. She said, would you offer me a discount? Because I want to send both my daughters. And I said, as much as I'd like to, this is how I feed my family. This is the price. And it's only limited to 10 or 12 people. That represents 20% of the class, we've got to, that's what it is. She goes, really? So you won't even discount it like a family price? But it was almost like this, like defiance and arrogance in her voice. So it kind of pushed a button in me. So this is what I said to her, everyone listening. I said, ma'am, hypothetically, let me ask you this question. I hope it never happens. So I'm just using it just as an example, just as a barometer, something for you to think about. God forbid your kids were kidnapped. How much would you pay to get them back? Now, I know you wouldn't pay $400, but how much would you pay? Click, zzz, right? You get it? Because, like she wanted a discount from the $199 a person, but she hung up on me. She obviously didn't sign it up. But it's like I always tell people, pay now or pay later.
Right. And you get what you pay for.
Right. That's true. But I go like, hey, honey, should we get an alarm? Should we get insurance for this? No, that never ends. Then something breaks or someone breaks in or whatever, and you've lost all your stuff. Now the insurance doesn't seem so expensive. This is preventative. I always tell people like a good self-defense program. And listen, my no fear program is self-defense for the mind. I also connect it to this, like your emotional well-being is connected to your relationship with fear. People who are in fight or flight all the time, sympathetic, high cortisol, stressed out, their body's being attacked by their thoughts, right? So, anxiety and stuff like that can be mitigated or controlled. And I'm not saying that I've got like this magic cure, but I've had outstanding results from this. We had a doctor who is a colleague of ours. He's been a psychologist for 20 years. He's using our psychobehavior and 3 other protocols that I designed to help vets with PTSD. And says, and this is verbatim, he says, this is more effective with them than most anything I've learned in 20 years of psychology. Like that's an actual quote of his, which is awesome. Crazy. But I tie this even to, and it's why we can do our Be Your Own Bodyguard, the 1-day course. is I tell people like the ability to protect yourself, like just if you're going to throw a palm strike or pick up an improvised weapon, permission to do that needs to run through your fear loop too. And that's what people don't understand. Like you can't just go to a martial art class and do like your 10,000 reps and think you're good to go. And that's
Right.
people mean well. It's not that the instructors don't mean well, but if you look at CCTV, dashboard video, body cam, surveillance video of actual violent encounters, people who are trained to engage threats never look cool and they never display like martial arty looking stuff. So if the people who that's their job to move towards the danger can't pull off most of the stuff they're taught in the academy, then how can the average citizen expect to do it? Right. So what I do, and that's why I created a no fear program as a standalone to our self-defense. If you were to come to our Be Your Own Bodyguard course or to our summer camp, everyone gets the exposure. The minimum, what I think is necessary is this 90-minute block on fear. And that might seem like crazy, like 90 minutes, that's all. Well, some people need more, but some people, that's all they need. It's almost like a light switch going on, right? You're stumbling around in the dark, and then I go, put your hand here. This is where the light switch, and the light switch will always be here. And when you find it, you know how to switch it on, but it's a self-awareness key.
And that was something that I found, and you're talking about this as it relates to martial arts, and you and I had spoken on the phone previous to me taking it, and you said, Andy, yeah, this will help you in self-defense, but it's going to help you in just about every aspect of your life. And I realized in doing this, it actually took me 3 hours, by the way, to get through it, because I was stopping, taking notes, and I had multiple epiphanies during this. And I realized that I was getting stuck in the fear loop to the point of I was no longer being able to use what I had in one particular fear as a fuel to get through what it was. I was getting stuck in it. I was in the loop, and it was causing a lot of anxiety. And so I sat there and I paused the stuff and I started looking at it. I was like, hey, here's my fear. I need to actually look at it. And let's look at it. Let's look at it on the loop. Let's figure out what's going on and what the problem is. And you know what? That was like, that lifted like a burden off of me, just because I had never heard anybody talk about it like this.
That's
there was
amazing,
just always fear is just fear, but you can understand fear. If you know what it is and you know how your brain is being hijacked, then there's a way you can work through what your problem is. So why is it so hard for us? I mean, it seems simple when you say it. It seems simple when I say it, but it's really hard for us to do. Why is that?
Well, first off, before I even answer that, I want to tell you how happy I am to hear that, and happy for you, because whether it manifests as depression or anxiety or hesitation or doubt, it could be, like my wife, I can tell in her body language is 60% of communication. I can tell when something's bothering her.
Yeah.
And having a high level of self-awareness, and the fact that I'm a professional coach, I'll go, hey, sweetie, what's up? And she'll go, nothing. And I know, and I don't know, is it money? Is it personal? Is it your parents? Did you have a problem with one of the kids? But something in her childhood has conditioned her to that she can't talk about it until it gets to a next stressful level. So I see that, and I got to wrestle with that and try and coach it out of her. The point I'm trying to make for everyone listening to this is that if she could overcome her fear, and this is ironic, I mean, it's very hard for a wife to teach her husband, and her husband to coach a wife, and hard for a parent to even coach their kids with some stuff. That's why it's like, because I told you so. No, like, it's not like, hey, let me explain to you how the brain makes decisions, So I'm sharing this because I don't want anyone going, well, how come his fear management stuff doesn't work for his wife? Because she hasn't studied it the way you did, Andy. She didn't go, this sounds too good to be true, but I'll give it a shot. But also, there were people who probably listened to the 90-minute thing, but you took how many pages of notes, did you say? 6 pages of notes.
I took 6 and drew
out
all the charts and
your
everything.
intuition while you were doing it went, this might actually work. I'm going to give it a shot. Right. And it's no different than like you hiring a coach. You hired me, a digital coach. And it's no different than you hiring a coach and saying, look, I need to lose 30 pounds for my wedding, and that coach goes, well, I want you to understand protein, fat, and carbs. And I want you to understand, calories and good calories and not so good calories. And and you don't follow the plan, but you get the information, right? You did the work, right? So you own the result.
Right.
The big thing I also want to share with your listeners and with you is like doing my no fear program. And because I do talk about fear very different than most anybody. And I recognized that 20 years ago, where everyone was focused on parasympathetic, sympathetic, fight or flight. You got to do this, you got to breathe, and all of that is true. But what was missing from it was always this idea that the mind navigates the body. At the end of the day, if your mind doesn't have a map, it's still groping around in the dark going, I hope this breathing exercise works. I hope this tapping exercise works. I hope these meds work. I hope my therapist answers the call. I hope going for my run, changes my mindset. So some of us, we get super stressed out. We go to the gym, we hit a bag, we hit weights, we go to the run, we start missing our workouts, we get cranky. But what these are different, like Pavlovian tricks or addictions that we're trying to use to control a behavior. What if we just said, okay, what's going on in my head right now? Where am I? Oh, I'm in the fear loop. And so the metaphor here is that my cycle of behavior is like a holographic map that's always under your feet, that you're always walking. You're walking around somewhere, and then you go, wow, okay, I'm about to get on a podcast with Tony Blauer. He's a fear management expert. I'm kind of nervous before this podcast. But imagine that. Imagine if you went, no fear. KNOW fear. I know fear. I feel fear. I'm going to accept my fear. I'm going to use my fear as a fuel. I'm not going to use it as like this big specter in the dark that's going to make me shirk away from this responsibility. And in some cases, I might even talk about my fear to my audience, right? I've been up on stage in front of hundreds of people, live TV, where I walk out and I thought it was going to be, I remember this one story I was telling a couple of people last week where I got invited to a program for airline pilots, and I was going to go talk on air rage. It was post 9/11, and FedEx had hired me to design the program for their They invited me to talk, but I didn't realize it was a 2-part gig. They said, hey, we need you to come into the airline pilots talk. You can talk about air rage and mindset and fear management. And I said, oh, great. How many pilots will be there? And they said like about 50. I said, okay, cool. Well, they answered me literally that there will be 50 pilots there, but there were about 500 people at this conference. So I thought 50 in a room.
Sure.
And then I go out there and there's like CNN and Fox and all these film back in the day when they might have been at the same event at the same time. And I'm like, whoa, open the curtain and go, what's this? And, the number one fear for most people is public speaking. Well, I'm a professional speaker, but, we tell people when a stimulus is introduced too quickly, it triggers a fear spike. And so this was like, even though I wasn't in physical danger, it represented danger to me. It was like, whoa. And I remember calling my wife going, oh my God, I just forgot everything I know. I can't do this. I don't know. And she starts laughing and she reminded me, do you know how many times in the last 10 or 15 years you've called me and said the same thing? And so there's a good type of fear. Like my fear was I wanted to do really well and change lives. I wanted to inspire people. Right. And so, fear can be very cathartic, and it can be when you look back, it can be your friend.
One of the things that you were talking about, and I think you were heading this direction, one of the things I really found useful was the understanding that there is a vocabulary that victims have. Can you tell us about what it is that people think, what it is that they say that leads them to kind of be a victim more than a victor?
I hate painting myself in a corner and saying people say this, but the difference between a victim and a victor is really how they talk to themselves. So the victim saying things like, I can't believe this always happens to me. I can't believe this is happening now. 2, if it's like a violent encounter, oh my God, I'm going to die now. Right. So, but I've literally had that where, because most of my business is training people who actually fight, like real bad guys, right? And there's not wearing a cup or a mouth guard. And so I'm not being facetious here. The feedback that I've gotten for decades, I know what works and what doesn't work. I know what goes on. And so we teach self-defense. And where I'm going with this is I had a cop who called me up after a confrontation where he did a stop on a guy on a bridge, and he went to go secure the guy. He's inside the reactionary gap, and the guy turns around and just attacks him, just explodes and attacks him. And he's on top of the cop, and he's screaming, "I'm going to kill you, cop! I'm going to kill you!" And he's hitting him, and the guy's grabbing at the cop's gun. And this officer tells me the story after. He says, "I thought I was going to die." He said, "I thought this is it." He said, I started seeing things that weren't relevant to my survival. Like I was upside down, being choked, and I could feel his hand on my gun. And I was like looking at the car in front of me that had stopped because it was a fight on a bridge. He said, I was looking at other people looking in like horror. They didn't know what to do. He said, and I realized, he said, then I started remembering some of the stuff that I taught him. And he said, I realized I was distracting myself so I didn't have to take responsibility for what I had to do.
Wow.
Really heavy moment.
Yeah.
Wow, right? And then he just switched into, the shift was, I'm going to die, to I don't want to die. What do I need to do? Like a lot of you listening to this might go, wow, that's heavy, and hopefully have the same reaction as you. But if I said, so all you need to remember is say, I don't want to die. But like that is really the chasm of fear taken to the worst level possible.
Right.
So the victim and victim shift is it's just simple language. I got into golf a while back. I haven't kept up with it because it was incredibly difficult.
Oh yeah.
And I'm reading this book on golf psychology. And there's this famous coach whose name just escaped me. I think it was Jim Fick. And he's coaching a world famous PGA guy. And the guy hits the ball, and it's a lousy shot. And I'm not going to say on your show what he actually said.
Sure.
But he said something like that, like, I don't believe I back them suck, blah, blah, blah. And the guy stops him and he goes, hey, if I were coaching your kid and I said that to him, what would you think? Would you let me continue coaching? He goes, no. I would go, whoa, you don't talk to my kid that way. And he looks at the guy and says, then why are you talking to yourself that way? And it was really potent. I got goosebumps right now just retelling it, even though I botched the story, couldn't remember anyone's name. But it was this idea, like listen to how we talk to ourselves. Yeah. Why does this happen to me? I suck. Man, like I'll never get a break. And that's all victim dialogue, and that will perpetuate. And I'm not talking about law of attraction or anything like. I'm not saying whether you believe in that or not. I'm just saying your self-talk is everything. And that's why when I created No Fear, it was this idea that this metaphor of, the ring is your life and you're the fighter. The coach in most boxing matches is outside the ring. You come back to the corner, you blew the last round, you're getting your butt kicked, and your coach says, what are you doing, man? You need to get outside his right, and you got to beat him to the punch and stop dropping your hands. And he's giving you stuff that and you go, and if you can apply it, you go back in there and you do better. And maybe you draw, maybe you win, maybe you lose, and you learn. But I went, I can't be there whispering in your ear, Andy, do this now. You got to, Andy, get your hands up. No. So I wanted to create a way that people could be their own coach.
And that's great. And one thing that I took away from that, of course, I do a lot of study and a lot of talking to people about home defense. And one thing that I realized in thinking about someone breaking into your home, I always advocate for people to use the adversarial mindset. How would somebody break into your home? And you think about that, and then you reverse engineer what you discover. But when it comes to mindset, I think a lot of people, when they think about somebody breaking into their home, they automatically give that control to the intruder, because they're the one who was, they're the one who's being active. They're the one who started. You are responding. They acted, you're responding. And so I think a lot of people, a fear spike is obvious. I mean, that's going to happen. But a lot of people will think, oh my gosh, what is this guy going to do? What is he going to do next? Where's he going? Instead, now that I understand the vocabulary of a victim, you need to say, what am I going to do to him? If
Right.
he breaks into my home, what am I going to do to him? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to protect my family. I'm not going to give him any more control. I need to step up and be mentally ready to do what I need to do to protect my family.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors and facets to that. I'll share with you and your listeners. Bad guys only want one of three things: property, body, or life. So if someone's in your home, they got a gun or a knife and they don't have a mask on, they're not after property, right? Like there's
Correct.
something wrong there.
Yes.
Most burglaries that go bad are somebody doesn't want to go back to jail. They're on probation. They've been a bad guy their whole life. And they've broken into your home or your apartment or whatever because they think you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
And you come home early, or you're supposed to be on vacation, or it's an inside job. There's so many scams out there and so many distrustful people where someone knows your routine and they tell their buddy who they know, that's their racket. Okay. Andy's away always today, like from 12 to 5, blah, blah, blah. So in a case like that, where someone was trying to burglar your home and their intention wasn't to harm you, the fact that they're not concealing their identity, that they're violating parole, probably, it can get violent pretty fast. That's a scary thought, but Secure Dad, you talk about scary stuff, so let's just be transparent here.
Sure.
You want to be in that moment. Those are usually sudden and very violent. But then the two alternatives, remember, property, body, or life. Someone walks up to you with a gun and they got a mask on and they're trying to conceal their identity. And he says, give me your wallet. You can go property, body, or life. He's trying to conceal his identity. You can play the odds there. You can go, okay, here's this. But be prepared for them to go, come with me, get in the trunk, put this hood on, put this tape on. And you've got to be ready. And in that moment, like, as horrific as this is, like, you don't want that to be the first time you thought about this.
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah.
Right. So that's the scary thing. So whenever there's like an active killer, active shooter incident, people go crazy about, well, that's why I carry and that's why I gun. And I go, blah, 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 blah. You don't know what you're going to do. There's military and police officers that can't get their gun out of their holster. And they're trained at a different level. But if the emotional brain, reptilian brain, amygdala, limbic system are hijacked because the stimulus just does something to you that you're like, whoa, you don't know what you're going to do. So you need to think about this. And if you can, even rehearse it. So I would tell people, someone broke into your house, you need to have thought about, what is your directive right now? Are you alone or is your family there? Your job is to protect your family. If all you've thought about is some macho, I'm going to go right at him, I'm going to pick up my whale tusk or my fire extinguisher, right? That's a nice reference to the terrorist attack on London Bridge.
Yeah.
And I always talk about that. Like, a lot of people, like, the most important thing that I tell people about that is, and I say this, it's a meme that I created years ago, don't confuse technical with tactical. Mm-hmm. Don't confuse technical is like, what style should I do? How should I step? Or should I make a fist here? Tactical is just doing something protective. Tactical is just getting into the fight. If you've got a high degree of skill, you can be maybe tactical and technical, but the evidence isn't out there to support that. Being tactical is the most important thing. So, but you can't get tactical if you don't manage your fear. So that's the whole no fear connection. Is like, most men don't like talking about their last will and testament and getting life insurance, and they procrastinate on doing that. Well, what is that? Well, that's fear, because you don't want to think about your mortality and what would happen if, and the circumstances. So most people avoid that, but that's just fear. So that's where fear becomes the friend, the gift of fear, as Gavin de Becker calls it.
Right.
Is where, well, how do I use fear as fuel? How do I use fear as something cathartic? Okay, I got to overcome this because this is a reality. and I want my wife and my kids to be protected if this is a dad show.
Mhm.
In the house, it's okay. I don't want to even think about this. I hated this episode with Blauer. Andy, thank you. I'm writing in going, it was enough. Like telling me which alarm or Medico versus, Abloy, that's fine. But like this whole stuff, that really took it to another level. I'm unfollowing you. Well, that's just fear. That's fear too. So
Mhm.
thinking about what would I do? Most people, if they come home and they see their house has been broken into, most people with total disbelief, incredulous, walk in going, oh my God, we've been
Right.
robbed.
Sure.
Not thinking maybe the bad guy or guys are still there and you surprise them
Yeah.
and do some stats on the number of maimings, injuries, murders that resulted during surprising a burglar, right?
Yeah.
It's a number you don't, and even if the percentage is low, if it happens to you, it's 100% of your face,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
So you want to think about this, and it may take you like a couple of months of just
Oh, yeah.
listening to this or thinking about it. Maybe, and you go, you know what? I should do it. Is my house secure?
Mhm.
But what would I do if, I go, like I get asked, sometimes I'll get called by like some executive VIP and they go, listen, man, I got a bodyguard and I got a dog and I got an alarm. I think I'm good. I go, yeah, you're good. Unless the dog is poisoned, the alarm is circumvented, and the bodyguard is off duty or compromised. And they're like, what? They go like, be your own bodyguard, man. I mean,
Right.
that's the title of the course, be your own bodyguard. I designed it because most people can't afford a bodyguard. And the reframe was like, well, bodyguards are hired to protect VIPs, but Andy, do you have your own bodyguard?
I do not.
No, but aren't you a VIP?
I am to me, yes.
Yeah. You are to you and you are to your family
Right.
and your friends. You're a very important person, and even to some listeners here, you put out important content, right? So imagine, so this whole idea is like, am I self-sufficient?
Mhm.
And then, I'm being literal and philosophical here, but, can I protect myself?
Mhm.
I don't, I always tell people you're the first responder in your fight.
Yeah.
In your confrontation, you don't even have time to dial 911 on 911. It's happening now.
Right.
3, 2, 1, go.
I tell you what, man, this has been awesome. As we wrap up here, this is a question that I love to ask all of my guests. What is it that you wish every family in America knew about fear?
Just that we're afraid of fear. And if we didn't fear fear, what would we do? And so the idea there is like, change your relationship with fear, you change your life. If your kids are taught how to look at fear differently, then you change their life. If you and your wife could talk about things that scare you differently, you change your relationship. And, I'm talking about interpersonal now, not like violent fear or,
Right. Right.
secure dad has a connotation of like, hey, I mean, we're here to proactively protect you against threats. Right. And so there's
Mhm.
a real like mechanical formula there. But what I'm talking about is what you alluded to earlier and your experience doing my program. And that is it can change your life, or where you didn't realize, or you did realize you had fears that had nothing to do with, like if I said to you, are you afraid someone's going to break in your house? You go, hell no, man. I got a dog. I got a guard. I got like this special window. I've got like all of these like things that I teach people about. That's all. No one's breaking in my house, at least not without making a lot of noise and letting me know.
Right.
And so you don't have a fear there, but you had other fears in your life that were impacting the quality of your life that you didn't even know about.
Mhm.
And so the most important thing I would tell people is that changing your relationship with fear changes your life, but it doesn't take away fear. It just it changes how long you commiserate and stay in that victim mindset of, wow, I'm afraid right now. And that's all it is recognizing the fear spike and then applying some fear management strategies.
Yeah, man, and it is awesome. So, Tony, I know people are going to want to know more about you. Where can people find you?
I'm not going to tell anyone where I live, I'm online. I'm online, man.
Right.
If you just Google Tony Blauer, My website, my main website is Blauer, my last name, Blauer, Spear, Spear. I'm on Instagram, Tony Blauer. I'm on Instagram. Our training is spear.system. But if you just Google it, it's all over the place.
Oh, yeah, it is. Tony, I very much appreciate you talking to us today. I appreciate what you're doing every day to help people like me learn how to manage fear and protect themselves. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy. I enjoyed this.
That's all we have for the Secure Dad podcast for today. Thank you for listening. I very much appreciate Coach Tony Blauer being on the show. If you want to know more about No Fear, our conversation today was only scratching the surface. Tony was also kind enough to give us a discount code. If you decide to do the No Fear seminar, use discount code SecureDad2020 at checkout. That's all one word, no capitals, SecureDad2020. Check out today's show notes for more on using the discount code. Don't forget, if you have a moment, please leave a rating and a review for the podcast. When you do, it helps other parents find the show and helps us reach as many people as we can. I'm Andy Murphy, and until next time, take care and be secure.
You've been listening to the Secure Dad Podcast. For more information on making your home safer, check out Andy's book, Home Security, The Secure Dad's Guide. Available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle formats.